So the immediate efficacy clause creates in the judiciary an urge to grant some real results. So every judge in Brazil thinks that he is personally responsible for granting health and education and housing and environmental protection. So they think that they are the main responsibles because the legislative is not developing the right, the executive is dealing with its own priorities. So judges are the guardians of the Constitution, they are supposed to do so. And here we'll have a first flaw in our system, a first indication of the regressive potential of that kind of framework, which is what I call the mercantilization of those fundamental rights. When we go to the law school and we are having our procedural classes, there's a very classic example, at least in Brazil, and I think it's common in the whole wide world, which is the wedding dress that is not ready to the wedding day, and therefore that positive obligation doing the wedding dress would be translated into pecuniary compensation, financial compensation. So that idea, that frame of thought that we learned in the early days in the law school is being translated to the socioeconomic rights context. So if there is a right to housing, there is no house available, I cannot find a house in the drawer of the mayor or something like this, so let's grant some kind of financial aid or financial compensation. This is very common in the right to housing. We have in Rio de Janeiro a specific public policy that is oriented to the situations in which, due to public work, we, the city hall, are taking people out of their original place. And in that specific public policy, there's a clause that thinks about, that mentions the possibility of giving some kind of financial aid. So the judges are applying that idea to every single possible lawsuit that involves the claim of a right to housing. The financial aid, only for you to have an idea, is something about $100 a month. Well, we have other, why am I mentioning regressive effects? Because when we think about socioeconomic rights in a very abstract manner, it's like Carolina mentioned, wow, what a beautiful constitution, what a huge list of socioeconomic rights. You should be a very developed country, a very equality should prevail in Brazil, and we do know that this is not what really happens. So I think that in the socioeconomic realm, it is time for us to think about what can be translated into reality, because those proclamations can turn into window dressing, can create some sort of comfort zone to the executive branch, to the legislative branch, and therefore the whole transformational project that is associated with socioeconomic rights may turn into a complete failure. So the Brazilian experience demonstrates the possibility of regression coming from that framework that push people into the judiciary in order to obtain the grant of socioeconomic rights. I've mentioned one possibility, one possible regressive effect, that is the mercantilization. As a second regressive effect, if you take into account massive judicialization through individual claims, would be inequality, different judicial responses to the same basic claim. And this happens all the time in the right to housing. You have people who had a house, in which they lived through renting. The house was affected by sliding or something like this, a natural phenomenon, flooding, and they will go to the judiciary for asking for protection of the right to housing, which they were perfectly capable to provide before, because they were paying the rent, as many of us surely do until today. Another regressive effect is the establishment of a first in, first served basis. If you have people searching, claiming their socioeconomic rights mainly through the judiciary, this will certainly happen, and you have the absence of any kind of prioritization criteria, which is a core element, I think, creates, as I've already mentioned, some sort of comfort zone. But the last question, the last point that I want to stress is the fact that thinking about socioeconomic rights, the content of socioeconomic rights should be defined from some sort of distributive justice criteria. So you're supposed to reflect, to think about what kind of social transformation and what part of your population you want to protect with those socioeconomic rights. So transferring the discussion directly to the judiciary hides that core question about socioeconomic rights. Therefore, you have a very perverse distribution, because it would be according to the personal empathy that a judge can develop. So in conclusion, because my time is already gone, the decentralized model in Brazil associated with the immediate efficacy clause creates a false impression that judicial decisions might accelerate the whole transformational project brought by socioeconomic rights, but this is not so. This is not necessarily a good idea. So judiciary should not be the main source of granting socioeconomic rights. This also brings back to the table the old challenge on the necessary reconciliation between judicial review and democracy. We are supposed to take that discussion again, assume that discussion again in order to bring back the discussion about the construction of those rights to the social and political realm. So this is the main lesson that we've learned from this almost 30 years in the Brazilian Constitution. Thank you very much.